Good afternoon. My name is Maggie Rivas Rodriguez. Today is January the 7th, 2011. Am I in Los Angeles?
Yes, Los Angeles.
Okay, Los Angeles, California, at the
Hazard Park
Armory. And I'm interviewing Henry Alfaro for the Voces Oral History Project. Thank you, Mr. Alfaro, for agreeing to be interviewed by the project. And just so I have it on the record, if there's anything that you don't want to discuss, you don't have to.
I know that. Yeah.
And if there's anything that you want to discuss, just shake me, and I know that you're not going to have a problem telling me that you want to discuss it.
Just don't call me Latino or Hispanic. Okay. I despise that.
I think I got that message.
Yes, right.
And if you want to stop the camera to get a drink of water
I
to
will.
use the facilities.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm looking over your pre-interview form, and it says that your father was born in El Paso,
right,
and worked at the Southern Pacific Railroad as a painter.
Yeah.
Do you know when he moved? At what point did he move to California?
They came in in the late 20s, him and one of my uncles, and they dropped off in a place called Coachella in Indio. And they told my uncle and my dad that be careful because they shoot Mexicans on sight. So as soon as the train stopped, they were like bummed on the train. They jumped off the train and ran into some other Mexicans, and then they worked in the fields for many years before he came over to Los Angeles, and where he eventually met my mother.
Do you know how they met?
No, not quite. But I do know that they both endured tremendous hardships in coming to this country. My mother came to this country illegally, along with 7, 8 sisters and one brother. And I'm proud to say that the grandchildren have certainly excelled expectations, where you have the stereotypical illegal alien, so to speak. While in this case, I was the first in the family to go to college, and I did well for myself working in television news. We have academic All-American quarterback, my son, we have others that have excelled in a variety of sports, and more importantly, they went to schools like Berkeley and Santa Clara and University of Houston, Michigan State, Cornell. We have law enforcement people. And this is the real American dream, and so I'm very proud to talk about that.
Did you know, did your parents have much formal education, do you know?
No, my father, I think, went to about the 4th grade, and my mother just about the 4th or 5th grade. But my dad learned how to read and write and just push himself. My mother spoke very broken English, but she was a sharp lady. She was a feisty one, and I've been in a few fights in growing up, but I've never been hit as hard as my mom. Una chaparrita que pega como bronco,
Did did they speak Spanish or English? Your mother must have spoken Spanish to you growing up.
Oh yeah, in fact I didn't start speaking English until I started 1st grade. It's always spoken home. And thank God for that, because to this day I speak fluent Spanish.
So you're very light-skinned and have blue eyes. Were your parents also light-skinned and fair?
They were fair. Yeah, they're fair. My dad was ruddy complexion. My mother was light, and so that's where I got it from, I guess.
Okay, we'll get back to that in a little bit, but I'd like to get from you. Your father did he stay working at Southern Pacific when he was here?
No, my father had a number of various jobs, and he was a laborer for a number of years, and but he always managed to provide for the family, and that's where I got my work ethic. That he used to drag me around when I was a kid to go work with him, clean hillsides, clean homes, yard work, paint, knock things down. So I've never been afraid of work, because that's the way I was brought up. And all my other friends that I grew up with were the same way.
So whereabouts in Los Angeles did you grow up?
Lincoln Heights. Actually, my first recollection of life was a place called Happy Valley, which isn't too far from Hazard Park here. A lot of rivalries and gangs. And the others, then we moved from we moved to a place called Frogtown, right along the LA River because of the jillions of frogs that come out during this part of the year. It was closer to my dad's work. But in going to school there, I used to get in fights just about every single day because the gringo kids would make fun of me because I couldn't speak English. And, you know, there were the slurs, dirty Mexican and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, I just grew up, I said, screw these guys, I'm going to get them. And when I got older, I'd get my friends who would go up and down those streets looking for these clowns that at one time picked on me. Fortunately for them, we never found them. But then anyway, we, from Frogtown to Lincoln Heights, and that's, for all intents and purposes, that's my barrio, right over here.
So at that point in Lincoln Heights, was it mostly Mexican?
Mexican and Italians.
And did they get along, the Italians?
Oh, we got along great, yeah. In fact, we had a reputation that you just didn't mess with people from Lincoln Heights because we were basically a lot of athletes, a lot of good athletes. And you learn how to do all these things that they say in Spanish, a huevo, you know, you know, it's one of the things that I attributed the fact is what makes the Mexican-American, the Chicano guys such valiant soldiers. And I think it's all part of growing up because when you grow up in that kind of environment, the bigger guys push you and you don't back down, even though the odds may be against you. You just don't back down because then you're going to be described a chicken. That's the worst thing that you could be labeled. So consequently, you know, you fight and, you know, you hold your own. And I think that was the other thing. I know that from friends that were in the service and there was a war and all that sort of stuff, pardon the expression, but tenían huevos, you know, and that's what it's the way you all grow up. You know, like I said, I never went in the service, but because I had a scholarship to go to Pepperdine, and that's where I met my wife, and eventually I got married and I didn't go in, but it wasn't the lack of wanting to stay away. As so many of our generation now, they're a bunch of cowards. And I think that we uphold the tradition of being the valiant men of this country because that's part of our upbringing, to defend your family and to defend your country. That's what a Chicano is all about.
So it sounds like you were in a lot of fistfights growing up.
Well, not a lot, but you know, I had my share. I don't want to sound like I was a boxing champion, but I held my own, and it was just the idea that you learn how to hit first.
Did you get black eyes and any broken noses or anything like that?
You know, I had a broken nose and black eyes, but that was from sports. I'd been popped a few times, but you know, let's not even talk about that. That's so long ago.
Well, tell me about your athletic stuff that you did. What sports were you involved in?
Well, I've always been a good athlete, and I've had a good arm. And I played football, basketball, baseball. I ran some track, and I boxed at the boys' club, and I did a lot of those things. And then right over here at Lincoln Park, that's where you learn. And again, I was talking about the older guys. They see you, and then they tell you to come and play with them. And it was an honor to play with the bigger guys. You know, you'd get trampled, all that, but again, you wanted to show courage. You don't want to show that you want to shy away, and you used to get some bumps. But sooner or later, the bigger guys would say, way to go, Henry, and that was a big compliment. And so you gain that encouragement and, you know, a lot of natural ability. And so when I went to high school, I played quarterback, and I was on championship teams on 3 out of the 4 years, and I got a football scholarship to Pepperdine. And I also played basketball and softball and baseball and everything. But sports has always been a part of my life. And so I've been fortunate that in my own family, my son, David, was an academic All-American with a 3.6 in biology at Santa Clara, one of the leading passers in the country during his junior and senior years. My other grandson played at UC Davis. And
Sorry. So you were the first in your family to go to college. Tell me
Right.
about that. What inspired you, or how did you? Was it the sports that got you into college?
Well, it was a combination of things. When I was my sophomore year at Cathedral, one of the Christian brothers asked me if I would like to work on the Chimes newspaper, which is the school paper, and he said being the sports editor. So by the end of my sophomore year, I was the sports editor. Normally they wait for you to be a junior or a senior, but I got it pretty quickly. And I liked it, and I worked at it. And then I got into an organization called the Scholastic Sports Association that was sponsored by the then Los Angeles Times. And what it consisted of was the sports editors and editors of the high schools throughout Southern California. And I went and took a look at it, and those guys were a lot different. You know, they were all from the West Side schools and kind of sissy guys, you know, and all that. And I used to think about, you know, I don't think this is for me. But at the same time, there was one man by the name of Ralph Alexander who was the director, and he kept encouraging me, come on down, come on down. And like on Friday and Saturday nights, well, those are my nights to go out with my buddies and raise hell. And so I thought, well, little by little, and I used to go hang out at a pool hall and Chavalito, but you know, with all the old criminals in there. And they liked me, and I liked to be in there, you know. And so one time I had a little byline, what they call agate type in the newspaper. And I came in there and go, hey, Henry, and they made a big baloo out of the fact that my name was in the paper. They were so proud of me. So here's a case of the bad guys influencing you to be good. And because I remember that. And I wasn't about, when I got the scholarship and all these, I wasn't about to let them down. And so that got me started. And so I'd go down, and then I had some number of stories, you know, my bylines and things like that. I became president of the organization. Not to be modest, but at the same time very proud. I was president of everything when I was in high school, and I was just a leader. That's what I always wanted to do. I wanted to lead. I never wanted people to tell me what to do. Even to this day, now that I'm an old veterano, I still don't take directions well. Anyway, the organization, I started getting interested, and you know, starting to write some stories and becoming the president. And eventually they had our annual Scholastic Sports Association banquet, and I invited then Ronald Reagan, who was president of the SAG organization, to be our keynote speaker. I'd also invited, at the time, Vice President Nixon, and he declined because he had other commitments, and J. Edgar Hoover. So I still have those letters someplace, you know. And anyway, I got the scholarship. I prayed so hard for it, and I got it.
What is the name of the scholarship?
What is the name of it?
Uh-huh.
Just Scholastic Sports Association Scholarship to Pepperdine University. And
So it was a scholastic scholarship, not an athletic scholarship.
no, I got both.
Oh,
Yeah, I got both. And but I couldn't. I had to give up playing football because, you know, my mom and dad had no money at all. And I mean, they made sacrifices for me, and I realized what my future was going to be. It wasn't going to be in football or in things like that. It was going to be at the newspapers. So I stuck with it, and I gave up football, and I worked 40 hours a week at night, and I carried 16 units a semester. But that's my good friend Jaime Escalante would say, tienes que tener ganas. And man, I had muchas ganas because I had so much to prove to a lot of people, and especially in growing up where I did. Cute little sidebar, when it came out in the newspaper that I'd won a scholarship, the ladies in the neighborhood were asking my mother, you know, your son got a scholarship. What college is he going to? And my mother, as I mentioned, that she could not speak very good English, she thought, and she says, he's going to Peppermint. So I'm the one and only graduate of Peppermint College. And but she was so proud. I've never forgotten that. And then again, when I go talk to groups and they say, well, we have to work, we have to do this, I said, BS. If you want something bad enough, you're going to get it. Go after it. So I don't have any you know, people that use excuses, later for them.
Let me ask you this, because you mentioned, for those of us who aren't from Los Angeles and don't know the difference between East Los Angeles and West Los Angeles, you talked about this in this group that you're starting. You were
They were the rich kids, and I was the only one from Lincoln Heights. In fact, when they asked me what my nationality was, I saw Mexican. I said, no, you're not. I said, what the hell do you think I am? You know, they had already had preconceived ideas of what Mexicans are. So, but you know, they were the white kids. I shouldn't use it derogatorily because a lot of them were, to this day, are still friends. I don't see them a lot. They're just good folks.
Now, you said that you had a lot to prove. What did you have to prove and to whom?
I had a lot to prove to myself. I've always been a person that, you know, I liked, quite frankly, I like to be the gun. And so I played quarterback. I played point guard in basketball. I played pitcher and shortstop in baseball. Those are the key positions in my estimation. But it was just that desire to prove to people that, hey, I'm just as good as anybody else. In fact, you know, I learned that very quickly when people would sort of say, well, you're a Mexican. Well, screw you. You know, I'm cleaning up the act here. But I just wanted to prove to people that we're just as good as anybody else.
What made you feel like people thought that we weren't as good as anybody else?
Well, you can see it. You know, people would say, well, where are you from? I said, Lincoln Heights. Oh, you live near the jail. And at that time, there was Lincoln Heights Jail. And, you know, they sort of, you know, even in college, they would make note of something about, oh, we're going to listen to your, you know, your kind of music. So what I'd do, the guys would say, okay, fine, I wouldn't say anything to them. I'd just take their girlfriends away. So, yeah.
Okay, so you go to school, you get involved in this organization of sports writers, right? Mm-hmm. And then you see your byline, and that kind of makes you think of journalism in a different way. Yeah. Before that time, did you think about writing for a newspaper or look at the newspapers and think?
No, the only thing was that I was writing for the school paper. But even then, I wanted it to be good. And they say, how do you become a writer? And you say, by writing and rewriting and rewriting, and then rewriting some more until it comes out. And that's how you become a writer, as far as I'm concerned. You don't sit down and all of a sudden you're a poet. No, you work at it. So it's never been a thing that, I just do a lot of things because I have a lot of pride in myself.
So you went to Pepperdine and you continued, you got a journalism, was it a journalism degree that you got? Yeah,
well, I have an English degree. At that time, they didn't have what they now, all these various fancy names. I got a degree in English.
And so, so then tell me a little bit about where you went to work after that. And I'm not sure.
Well, I was working, at the same time I got that scholarship to Pepperdine, I got a job as a copy boy with the Examiner. And that meant working at nighttime and learning the ropes there. But again, I hustled, and you know, you're never late, always working, always thinking of ways to improve things. And the people took notice of that, and then the old-timers, I had the best journalism class in the entire world, working with the real pros of the newspaper industry. And they used to start giving me copy to rewrite on it, or also to write heads, or to what do you say when you cut it down, to edit, and all these things. And then a couple of them would say, he says, Henry, you know, you're the future of here at the Examiner. And again, I've always had the fortunate, being very fortunate to have had good mentors. And so I did want to go into sports because that's what I really wanted to do. But I also realized that there were a lot of sports guys, young people at the Examiner. It was going to take me a long time to get in there. So what I did was, as soon as there was an opportunity, which came in the financial department, heck, I didn't know the difference between a dividend and a stock. But again, it was my foot in the door. And I went in there, and I had excellent teachers, and they gave me a lot of responsibility, the more and more and more. And then again, I was not one of those 9-to-5 type of guys. They'd say, you want to write a story? I'd say, yeah. So I would stay after on my own time and write and rewrite. And then I also went to school. I went to UCLA, and I took a corporate finance class. But that was way over my head, and I knew that. I was in there with the suit and tie guys. And then I went to East LA College just to get the basic principles of economics. And that helped me out a little bit. But again, it was learning on the job. And I had some great teachers. And so the guy that I replaced had attempted suicide. He cut his wrists, and he didn't have the dexterity in his fingers. So when he wanted to come back to work, the head man, a guy by the name of Warden Willard. He was the editor and publisher, and he said, how's Henry doing? And they said, fine, we're going to keep Henry. But again, see, that's, you earn that recognition of being a hard worker, and they see that. And unlike today's people that, I used to interview some people to come in as trainees or whatever. First of all, they want to find out is what time do I go to lunch, and I said, you can go to lunch for the rest of the month. I don't need you. And so I want everybody, I used to tell them, and I said very sincerely, you want to be a good journalist, you want to be a good reporter, you do what I tell you to do, and you do it exactly. And in the years that have passed, I get letters and calls from young ladies especially that say, hey, you were right.
So you started off as, did you say as a copy boy or as a copy editor at the Herald?
Copy boy.
Copy boys. And how long did you do that?
I did that all through college for 4 years.
So
and then for a while there in my junior year, I worked from 12 midnight till 7 in the morning, then went to school all day. And played sports. I used to take out girls and fall asleep after 2 beers, because you were just so beat. But you know what? Again, it was that drive.
So what years then were you a copy boy at the Herald Examiner?
I started working there in 57.
So
it's not the Herald Examiner. It's the Examiner.
The Examiner.
Right.
I was thinking Herald Examiner.
No.
The LA Examiner.
LA Examiner.
And how did you get that job?
I got that job because I got the scholarship to Pepperdine, and that job working there as a copy boy came as a result of that, and because people liked me. And
but how? I mean, did you just go to the Examiner and apply for a job, or was there some link?
So you want a job? And said, yeah. So that's the way it was. I didn't go fill out paperwork.
But did you know anybody at the Examiner?
I knew a lot of people, yeah. So that it was basically the effort of this Ralph Alexander who got me in. Dear friend, God, I owe so much to that man. He used to call me later on when I was working in television, and no matter what he'd ask, I'd do it because I was just so grateful.
So you worked at the Examiner for 57 to 59, something like that?
57 to about 60.
60?
Yeah, then I went to become the news bureau manager at Security First National Bank in Los Angeles.
Excuse me.
God bless you.
Thank you. Security what?
It was, at that time, was Security First National Bank, one of the 10 largest banks in the country. And I went to work there, and I left the paper because there was more money, and had a growing family. And then I decided to. I got hustled to go into the advertising, public relations work, with agencies. And it was always seemed very enticing. Again, there was more money, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to take that opportunity. And I went to work for an organization that was based in Detroit or Chicago, I forgot, McManus, John and Adams. But
what's the name of it?
McManus, John and Adams. And they were located way out there on Wilshire Boulevard. And they had a big account called Western Gear Corporation. That was their major account. And so they said, well, we'll train you. They didn't train me. They just threw me to the wolves. But that's what I like. Let's see. You either, the old trite cliche of you either sink or swim. So I'm about to swim. So I started working, and I went in an entirely different area. They specialized in electronics, the sonar equipment, printing presses, all kinds of things. And so, it was a learning process. And so I remember delving in, or getting into what they were talking about. And then they would say, well, why don't you write an article about this? And the engineers that I would sit with, they assumed that I knew points 4 and 5, forgetting that I didn't know 1, 2, and 3. And so I told them, I said, look, you want me to write something for you? You have to explain it to me. I'll ask you the questions, and then you give me the answers. And I'll write the story, and then you can, after a while, I really won their confidence in me, because they were getting bylines in magazines and things like that. And so, I thought, hey, I'm pretty good. I've never been shy. It's either you're good or you're bad.
So how long did you do that?
I worked for about a year or so. I didn't like it. You had to kiss ass all the time, and I don't I don't do that.
Whose ass did you have to kiss?
Well, some of the people from the agency, and also people at the corporation. And I made no bones about it. If they were wrong, I'd tell them. And in one little encounter, I won't go into all the detail, but this guy was the president, a guy by the name of Charlie Bannon. And he said, well, why don't you, we had to proofread some magazines. So that it was putting together. Again, that was an opportunity to put these magazines together for him and give me more experience. And he said, write it this way. I said, well, I think you're wrong. He says, no, write it this way. I said, fine. And so about 2 weeks later, when I came back with a copy, he says, who wrote this stupid thing? I says, you did. And you know what? He liked that. One time they told me to go pick up his golf clubs. I says, Charlie, man, I'm not going to go get your golf clubs. I'm not your errand boy. You send somebody else around here. I didn't come here to go pick up your golf clubs. And so they said, you told him that? I says, yeah, and darn right. And again, it's that cockiness, you know, that Chicano barrio thing, you know. And you know what? He liked that. The agency was all up in arms. They thought, oh man, we're going to lose the account because of Alfaro there, you know. And later on, he offered me a job there. But no, it got to the point where it was both a lot of travel and a lot of partying, and that kind of upset my wife and my kids. It sped my wife, you know. So I thought, hell, I don't know these people anything.
So you went from McManus to where?
McManus, John and Adams, and then I went back to the bank after that. Am I making sense?
Yeah, you're going back to Security First National Bank.
Yes. Well, then it became Security Pacific National Bank. And
what did you do then?
I was the PR bureau manager, press relations guy. And I felt very good again because how many corporations would a president or the chairman of the board or the executive officers call you to say welcome back? But they did. And so I liked it. And so then my wife and I started going to some of these major banquets. And they were very good because here you are with these multimillionaire people, and yet they would help out and bringing my wife in and not making her feel left out and all that sort of stuff. And my wife's a good-looking honey, you know, and she's very attractive, and so it added to their posture, so to speak. And so it worked out well. And then in 1970, I was doing well at the bank and doing very well. And then in 1970, I got a call from somebody from Channel 7. They said they were looking for a Mexican-American reporter. And he gave them my name. Excuse me. And you know, that was the first time in my life anybody had called me because of my nationality. And so I know it meant more money. But you know as well as I that you have that in your blood. You mentioned it earlier. I mean, that's your blood, your inquisitiveness, your toughness, your insistence on getting down to the fundamentals of things. And so I told my wife, I think I'm going to go look at it. But I'm going to go there with a reservation. I'm going to check these guys out. And you know, one of the other advantages, tremendous advantages of growing up in the barrio, you'll learn how to read people. You learn how to read people since you're a little guy. And that's when you hit or you run, or I know you don't run, but that's when, whatever. Anyway, so I went over there and I met the guy, and I was impressed by him. And because I said, I'm not going to be no token Mexican in the corner for anybody. And he just says, well, you know, you're just going to get out there in the line and see what happens. So they gave me a little screen test, and I guess I looked pretty good. And so I thought to myself, well, all of a sudden I now had a big responsibility. I was not only representing myself, but more importantly, I was representing the whole community of Mexican Americans in this area and my people. And I was going to make them proud. And so I felt if they're going to put me in that corner, that's not for me. There's only one way. Jump in and let's do the stories. And so I went out with a couple of reporters, and they showed me the ropes a little bit about what is a cutaway and a stand-up and all that sort of thing. And so a couple of months later, I won a golden mic for my coverage of the Sylmar earthquake. And again, it's, you know, instinct in a way that you go to these places and everybody just hangs around the perimeter. Not me. I'd get in there with, just give me some camera guys that have some big huevones, you know, and not huevones, excuse me. Just, you know, some guys with some big huevos, and, you know, because that's what I like to do. And we came upon a story, and I stayed with it, and we got a golden mic. And so I thought, I'm on my way. So I won a lot of awards and things like that.
So what is the Golden Mic? Who gives it out?
The Golden Mic is presented annually to the best television news reports or television stories, that immediate type stories that happening right now, series of stories, stories that you write, and all these different things. So I won all kinds of awards.
But who gives it?
Who gets it?
Who gives it?
Oh, it's the television. I think it's the television.
Is it RTNDA?
What is it?
Radio, Television, News Directors
I guess
Association?
so. Yeah, I'm not sure who gives it. All I know is I receive it.
Okay, is that the KABC? Is that where you went to work?
Yeah, KABC,
KABC.
Channel 7.
1970. And you were there from what year to what year?
I was there from 1970 to 2005.
That hasn't been that long since you left.
Yeah.
So you were a general sound reporter,
General assignment.
and did you anchor?
I used to anchor in the morning, but I just didn't. Between you and me, it was horrible, because I lived so far away and I couldn't sleep at night because you can't be late. So that's not a very fair excuse, but I'd rather just go out there and do my own thing.
I was a reporter for a long time too. I love being a reporter.
Yeah,
That's the fun. So when you were there, they were looking for a Mexican American. Why?
Because there was mandates for the motion picture and television industries to start hiring minorities. And
Was it the motion picture industry or was it the FCC?
probably a combination of things. I don't remember exactly, but I know that there was a directive, a mandate. And so this friend of mine that I went to school with, by the way, he was the one that called me and said, they're looking. Would you be interested? I said, yeah. Some more lana? I said, sure, you know. And so that's why I got there, and that's why I had that responsibility.
So how many Mexican Americans were there?
At that time, I think there was 2 others. One at Channel 2, and there was another one in-house there. Un borracho, you know, he was a clown, you know. Good guy, but a clown, you know.
So did you cover a lot of stories about the community, about Mexican Americans?
You know what? I made it a point to do that, because I figured that the most powerful weapon was that camera right behind me. And I could do a lot of things and make changes and go in there and be yourself in terms of trying to find out. One of the very first stories that I remember doing was that there's an old place in this area called Jimtown. It's near Whittier. In Jimtown, I was told there was only one way in and one way out. You didn't go there. And anyway, I got a call from some people in Whittier area on the one side of the freeway, where they said, Señor Alfaro, ¿los puede ayudar, por favor? Tenemos muchos problemas aquí y nadie los quiere oír. So I went down there, and it was horrible. It rained in that street. There was no streets. There were just mud puddles. These cesspools that overflowed. There was a stench. There was no lights, no sewers, no sidewalk, no nothing. And these people, there was about 12 houses there. So I went down there and I did the interviews, got everything. Then I went to the county supervisor, Gabriel Bonelli, and I went in there and I just charged at him. And he says, well, we do this, we do that. I said, you don't do anything. What are you going to do for these people? They're your constituents. But you know what? Within 2 weeks, they started putting in sidewalks and street lights and everything else. So I thought, you know what? Way to go, Henry. Way to go. And so I've never been shy. And, you know, there's been places where I've been able to save houses, or at least if I haven't been able to save houses for the people, is to at least get enough money for them to relocate and things like that. There's a lot of stories like that. But I always, and you build a reputation. And then during the riots, you know, I remember that in East LA, they banged this one guy, and Frank DeLomo from the LA Times, that's when I first met him, we were out there, and he told me, he says, Henry, you want to see a guy really beat up? Go to one of the houses there in the Maravilla housing projects. And they had this big Chicano dude, man. He was in a pile of blood, puddle of blood. He was in a puddle of blood. And they had him tied up, with the plastic. So the thing was, what'd he do? And they couldn't say he didn't do anything. And he said, well, and they left him there. Well, why'd you leave him there? So I said, this guy's going to die, and it's your responsibility. And the sheriffs were pretty, they didn't care. And so I called, and I told them to go get an ambulance. So we were waiting for them to bring out this injured man, young man. And all of a sudden, here comes a skirmish line of deputy sheriffs, and they stood right behind me. And all of a sudden, when the guy started coming out and put the light on the cameraman, whack, he got hit across the side, and he went down. And so, and I grabbed this deputy sheriff, and I said, what the F you doing, and blah, blah, blah. So that night I went on the air, and I told the story exactly the way it was. They didn't like it. So the sheriff's department called my wife, and they said, is Henry home? And so she said, well, no. I says, well, what do you want him for? Well, we want to talk to him about the accusations that he's made against the sheriff's department. And, my wife knows that my whole no punches back, and, it scared her. And that really ticked me off. You got a problem? Me, not her. And so the next day they came over the house, and about 4 or 5 of them, and all that. I know the game. And I told him, I says, I know why you're here. And if you think you're going to intimidate me, you're wrong. Because I'm not going to talk to you. I said, you prove to me that what I reported was a lie, then you're right. But I did not. So that's what I've always told people. Make sure that your facts, and it's always truthful. You don't report from your heart, although some stories, but at the same time, you got to be factual. And I think in today's day and age, you have all these wussy type reporters, men and women, who don't want to lose their jobs, and they're told what to do and how to do it and when to do it. To me, that's not being a reporter. Anyway, they weren't too happy about it. But I just told them, I said, if you ever have a problem, you come to me, you don't come to my wife. You're cowards, They got ticked off, I knew that. What are they going to do to me? Nothing.
Did KABC ever tell you to tone it down or anything? No,
never. And even if they did, I wouldn't do it anyway. Oh, I used to get a lot of battles. And, but see, that's the thing. When you're good, you can push. And when you know you're good, you push even harder. And I've always went after my own stories, variety of stories that I would always do. And because I knew that things were needed, and especially not only here, but all over the place. And it's been a great ride, been able to accomplish a lot. And I feel that somewhere along the line I helped somebody, and I have. Because
if you were of the same generation as Frank Del Olmo and you, and there were others who were starting, really the pioneers for getting any kind of, I don't want to say critical mass, but really a much more critical mass. So tell me a little bit about being what you found in the front lines of those newsrooms. Did KABC understand the issues of the Mexican American community here in LA?
Well, that was part of my education for them, educating them. I remember one time there was a shooting in East LA, and these gang guys had come by to shoot somebody, and they killed a little kid. And I went, then they told me, they said, well, go find a gang. I'm thinking, can you believe them telling me to go find a gang? And you know what? I went out to the location, and I did find a gang. And then they challenged. Great stuff for television. You tell those vapos over there that we're from wherever we were from, and they're going to come over here, we're going to shoot them, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And, that's antagonizing thing. That's fostering more violence. So I told him not to do it. But anyway, I did find the gang. But I did a lot of stuff. I don't even know where to begin.
So, just give me some specific stories where you had an idea and you knew what the story was. You knew there was a story there, because I know this happens to almost everybody.
Yeah.
And there was either a resistance to run the story or to even see it as an important story.
Well, I remember I came back doing a story one time, and it was something that was good. And they told me they weren't going to run it. And I told the guy, "Why aren't you going to run it?" And you look at them right in the eye, and they kind of hesitate to look at you. He said, "Well, we don't have any time." So then I kind of said what I felt. I said, "If you would have had the time, if they would have been out there, all these Mexicans shooting and killing each other, then you would have found the story." So, you have to speak up. And a lot of people today, they're afraid to do that. And so that's a very small example. Nevertheless, it's powerful because you get to know these guys, and in effect, you're intimidating. You intimidate people. And so you're not going to mess with me, pal, as long as I'm correct and I got the... But let's see what other... there's so many other stories. I can't even remember. I did a story about a little boy by the name of Tomas Dominguez, and we labeled it A Face for Tomas. And there was a little boy that lived in a place called Cañón Paredes in Tijuana. And he was playing with matches one day with a little can of paint thinner and things. It blew up in his face, and it was just horribly burned. The article came out in the newspaper, and the guy picked it up, some man, and wrote to the president, general manager at that time, John Severino. He says, "I've suffered it a lot in my time, but nothing compared to this little boy. Is there any way you can help him?" So they gave me the story, and I said, "See what you can do." And I knew darn well that I called to begin with, and this little boy was at this hospital in Stanford for his plastic surgery and things like that. And so they said, "Well, we don't want any publicity." I said, "Oh, okay." So I thought, put me on a plane, I'm going to go meet him in person. And so I did. So it's a lot easier talking to somebody and telling them that what I wanted to do. So that began a series of unforgettable stories about the suffering of this little boy, Tomas. And he was staying in Gilroy with a family, a foster family. And I went up there with the idea that I already had gone to Cañón Paredes to meet his mother and his sisters and his little friends. And to this day, I think, what was his name? Emilio or Docilio, whatever his name was. And so that way you can bring some of that to the kid. And so you get a little bond there. And so I was going to wait to do it like a sit-down interview. We hit it off just like that. Basilio, I says, "Tomás, estuve hablando con tu amigo Basilio." And he was horrible looking, just horrible. You look at him. But all of a sudden, all that ugliness just disappears. And I told the cameraman, "Roll. Just keep rolling. Just roll, 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 roll." And we got a great dialogue going. And it was a smash hit, and we raised over $100,000 for his plastic surgery. And to this day, Dr. Donald Love, who started Interplast, great friend, great hero. I don't have too many heroes, but he's one of them. And because of his heart and his ability to transform human beings into living human beings. We did a story, we went down to Ecuador, where they do a lot of work on plastic surgery. And so I went with him. And so that was another one that I still remember, Tomas.
It kind of raises the issue of the relationship between the source and the reporter.
Yeah.
In this case, Tomas was able to get from you. There was something that he gained. He gained some support for his work. In other cases, sometimes that's not so clear.
I understand. But this is a child, 6, 7 years old. See, that was one of the things. Even so, some jealousy crept up among some Chicano reporters. They saw you're doing it for the publicity. And it's not the case. They were jealous. They didn't have the heart or the courage to tell me face to face, but they went up behind my back. And so the thing is, you know, I went to prisons. People wanted to help them. All this different things. What more can you do for a human being? And I'm not paying anybody, or nobody's paying me. Like in today's society, you might say, some of the reporters, they don't do things, they don't say things because, like I say, they want to be invited to the party. They don't want to be left out. And if I ask you a nice question, yes or no, I know question, they know you. They don't have any respect for you if you're that kind of a wuss. But when you go in there and you go after them, you know, they fear you. But it's a respected fear, you might say, because sooner or later, you know, you could help them out. Who knows? But you're just going there with an attitude that I'm going to help.
Well, let me ask you that, because I know as someone who has been in the field for a while, there are times when your own people expect you to have very positive things to say about whatever situation.
That's right.
They're very surprised sometimes when you don't toe what they would consider the party line.
Yeah.
Did that happen with you?
Well, you know, people say, come over and do us, you know, the cops came over and beat us up. Well, I automatically know they did something wrong for the cops. So in other words, they want me to be a reporter for them. So I said, I'm not going to do the story. I've always been that way. Whether it be politicians and whether it be whatever it is. I just go after it. I just don't consider whether you're a brown like me.
So how do you tell them that?
How do I tell them?
How do you tell them, listen, this is kind of, you know, I'm not a reporter for Hispanics. I have a reporter who happens to be Hispanic.
I'm not a Hispanic reporter.
You're not at all.
No. That's a real sore point. You know, I think that's part of our problems. You tell me, I'm going to divert, but at the same time, do we really count? No. Do we really count? You look at your advertising nowadays. We have whites, we have blacks, and now we have Asians, and we have Indians. Then we have little mixtures of whatever it is. Do we see us? No. Why? Because we are not a threat. They don't know what the hell to do with us. And I think we bring it upon ourselves to say, well, what are you? They don't know what the heck we are. And then I talk to people and say, well, are you Hispanic or a Latino? Well, what's the difference? They say, well, a Hispanic speaks Spanish. Does that make me an Englishman because I speak English? You know, and, you know, montón de babosadas. And yet we're talking about these veterans, you know, that have done so much for this country. What do we see them? We don't see them. We don't hear them. It's like Guy Gabaldon. A very typical story. I got to meet him right over here. And we hit it off just right because we were both from the Heights. Boyle Heights, Lincoln Heights. And the guy was a chingon. And he was, you know, I don't know if you're familiar with the story, but...
I interviewed Guy Gabaldon.
Huh?
I interviewed him.
Oh, well, then you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the things that he did. And it was a disgrace. So I took copies I did interviews with his commanding officers, colonels this and colonel that. And they talked about him, what a magnificent Marine this guy was, a maverick. But you know, sometimes you just can't hold that position. You know, you don't sit there and move until you're told, man, you go get it. And he was the kind of guy that did so much. And yet when I asked him, I says, you weren't given the Medal of Honor? Was it the Medal of Honor? Yeah. And I said, well, because you're Mexican? He goes, yeah.
What difference do you think it would make if we didn't call ourselves Hispanic or Latino, we just called ourselves Mexican or Puerto Rican or...
Well, see, that's it, see. Now you tell me, you're from Nicaragua, all right? Now you come to this country and they say, Señor, ¿de dónde viene? De Nicaragua. ¿Y qué es nicaragüense? And all of a sudden I say, well, no, you're not that. Now you're either Latino or Hispanic. What's, you know, that's degrading. It really is. And so who is to say who you are or what I am? I'll tell you an example. We had this one lady doing a little commentary and Channel 7. And, you know, she was kind of pushy. And, you know, the people, they weren't quite sure how to take her. And I could take her just as some lady that comes up there and wants to get on the air, you know, with a bunch of pendejadas, you know. And so now all of a sudden she said, well, we should all be Hispanic Americans. So there was a directive, and I remember so vividly going to my computer, and it says, from now on, we're now to refer to all Spanish surnames individuals as Hispanic Americans. And I said, screw this, I'm not going to do that. And I went straight into the office of the editor, you know, and I told him, who gave this, I won't use the words that and he said, well, I said, I'm not going to do it. You mean to tell me some old broad here is going to tell me what I've been my entire life, and you're going to condone it and tell me what I am now as of today? I said, I'm not going to do it. And you don't like it? You can fire me right now, because I'm not going to do it. And I don't think anybody else should. From now on, we don't have to call anybody Hispanic American. I said, yes, you know. He still remembers that.
I've got to change tapes real quick.